In this video, we're going to look at the do-while loop construct to validate the input from a user. We will begin with a program that already has some information typed in, so we don't need to repeat what we've done in the past. In this case, you'll see we have the pound includes, as we always do. We have a variable of integer type that's already declared and set to 0. And we have the prompt and the scanf to accept a value from the keyboard that the user will type in. What we want to do is to use this do-while loop in order to validate the input. And that means we want to continue to stay in the loop as long as the value that's entered is outside the bounds 0 to 100. So we will have a loop for that, and this loop will ensure that our program will not continue until we get a value that is within the range that we've specified. Alrighty, now to use the do loop, we have to look at the syntax for the do-while loop, and it's very simple and similar to the while loop. We begin with just a single word do, followed by the curly braces, which will have the body of the program. After the right curly brace, we place the test for termination of the loop, and that is the while and whatever relational expression we need to go down here. Following that relational expression, we need to put a semicolon. So you still have the body of the loop as we have always, and we have just moved the test from the top of the loop to the bottom of the loop. If you like, you could even put this while on a separate line, so then we have the body of the loop separated like that. So whatever you prefer. In most cases, you'll see programs written that have the while on the same line as the right curly brace. Alrighty. Well, what we want to do here is we want to test the values that are input by the user. So let's go ahead and let's put the relational expression in that will take care of that. So while our value is less than 0, which would be out of range, or our value is greater than 100. Okay, that would be the condition. So as long as either side of that expression is true, then we have a value that's out of range, and we want to continue in the loop and allow the user to select a different value, or to put in a new value. Now let's take out some of the spaces that I've typed in here. Alright, now in the previous cases where we have maybe used a while loop to test for this, we had to have our input outside the loop, because in order to have a value to test at the top of the loop, then we needed to enter one before the loop occurred. In this case, we don't really need to do that because we have the test at the bottom of the loop. Now it's okay if you wanted to do that, that would be alright, but to illustrate that you don't have to, let's take those two lines, this prompt the user to enter a value, and let's even include the comment, and let's move that inside the body of this loop. Okay, now there's nothing up at the top except the comment to validate the input. So once we enter the loop, we will prompt the user to enter a value. We'll give them the information, and we will read the value in. Now, immediately after that, and let's tab this over so that we can indent our code inside the loop. After the value is input, then the test to see if it's valid shows up right afterwards at the bottom of the loop. So that's all we really need to do. This is the simplest version of testing an input value. We don't really have anything to do here currently. This could be a calculation that you would use the value for, but just to illustrate the purpose here of validating the input, then let's just put a Printf statement to indicate that we have validated the input when we have exited the loop. So let's Printf double quote the value, and it's a type integer, so let's use %d, has been validated. Alright, so let's fix my typing. So we'll just print that out. So let's use a period and a backslash in, a double quote, right paren. Wait, I need to print out the value, so that's comma value, then right paren and semicolon. So as long as the value is incorrect, that is, it's outside the range 0 to 100, then this loop will continue to be true, and we will continue to prompt our user to enter a value between 0 and 100. When they do enter a value that's within the range, we'll exit the loop, and we'll just output to the screen that the value has now been validated. All right, so let's build the program and run it. It's ready for us to input some values. So let's enter some values that are incorrect. So I want to enter -10. Now, it stayed in the loop. -10 is outside the range, it's less than 0. So -10 less than 0 is true. We stay in the loop, and we prompt the user to enter a value again. Enter an integer value between 0 and 100. Okay, let's make one that's too big. Let's enter 200. And we get the prompt again. Enter an integer value between 0 and 100. So as long as we input values outside this range, then our program is going to continue to prompt the user to enter a value. And hopefully they'll notice the message it has to be between 0 and 100. Let's try one more. Let's do 120. Okay, it doesn't work. All right. So we get the message. Now we have to input a value between 0 and 100. So let's input 50. When we do, we exit the loop, and we output the message at the bottom, the value has been validated. So in this way, then we continue to stay in the loop until the user inputs the value that we want. One disadvantage of using this do-while loop the way I've shown it is that we cannot change the message that we are giving to the user. All right, so let's suppose that we do wanted to give them an error message. We would have to add an if statement inside this do-while loop that would indicate to the user that they have entered an erroneous value. If they don't get the hint by saying it has to be between 0 and 100. So if we wanted to make sure that our user knew that they had input a bad value, we'd have to add an if statement here, and there's nothing wrong with that. We would have to test really twice to see if the value is within range or not. So we could use the same test, if value. So if the value is less than 0 or the value is greater than 100, then inside here, and I still cannot type value, V-A-L-U-E, that's better. So we could add this if statement, and if the value that they have entered is out of range, we could give them this additional message, printf, okay, a double quote, the value, and we could print the value back again. %d is out of range. So that should give them the message. They should get that. \n, double quote, comma, value, right paren, semicolon. So in this case, we would give them the additional information, the value %d is out of range, and then the while loop would catch that here, and we would return to the top of the loop. Now, with this added information, let's build a program and see what the output looks like this time. We have the input window, so let's type in some values. So let's make some out of range values, -10. And this time we get the additional message that we prompted or put out by the printf statement shown here. All right, so it says that the value -10 is out of range, and then we go to the bottom of the loop, we detect that that's the case, go back to the top, and we prompt enter an integer value between 0 and 10 once again. All right, so we give the user this additional bit of data to let them know that their values are incorrect. So let's try one more, 120. The value 120 is out of range. Then enter an integer value between 0 and 100. Okay, great. I want to use 250. And it says, no, 250 is out of range. Please enter an integer value between 0 and 100. So your program is not going to allow the input of any value that's outside the range that you want. All right, so let's put in a good value, 75. And this time we exit the loop and we print out the value 75 has been validated. press any key to continue. So this is a good application for the do-while loop. The do-while loop is probably used less than the while loop and the for loop, but in some circumstances, like this one, it is a very useful and it kind of makes sense to use a do-while loop for this particular application. Okay, that concludes this video.